in the scrimmage before the opening game against West Virginia last year. Luke, the scrimmage before, Jacob Coker had an awful scrimmage and we heard upwards of 3 of 19 and several interceptions. Can you run down the scrimmages so far? Do you have stats from those? Do you hear from Inner Circle what went on?
Well, they hadn't put out the stats. So that's one of the things. At least they didn't from the last one. But you get reports, and you have people that are at the various scrimmages, and you hear things. Jake Coker looked like Jake Coker. I know what Jake Coker now is. I know what he's going to do. I don't think he's going to get into this Wisconsin game, be the starter, and just the light's going to come on. I think it's too late. He has been taught by the best. Jimbo Fisher, say what you want to. He has kind of lost his mind. Jimbo Fisher's going through a lot of things at Florida State. He's going through a divorce. That can really mess you up. He just did something the other day where he put this yellow brick road down from the locker room to the stadium because Wizard of Oz is his favorite movie. I mean, you start getting into weirdo stuff like that. But he has one of the best offensive minds in the game.
You can't bring that up.
Yeah, I can get into it later. It's really weird, okay? I don't know what it's all about, but it's weird stuff. So he's one of the best offensive minds in the game. Lane Kiffin, again, you say what you want to about him, wears a lot of sweatshirts and hoodies and kind of goofy in his own right. He's one of the best offensive minds in the game. And the light hadn't come on yet for Coker. Here's the other thing that worries me. You're going to take this guy who is taking, he comes to Alabama with all this promise. Now, it wasn't his fault that the Sporting News and other places were saying, well, he's in the Heisman running. They were just saying that because he's Alabama's starting quarterback. It wasn't his fault, but it was still there. It hovered over him, and Auburn fans still made fun of him for it. And Alabama fans still feel embarrassed about it. None of that should have happened, but it did. And so that's weighed heavy on him. Now he's going to come in and be the starter in the biggest primetime game of the weekend, on the first college football weekend. And after the game, win, lose, or draw, he's also going to be in front of the microphone when I've never heard him speak. I mean, I've heard him speak when I was on the field at the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game when he played in it, but I hadn't heard him speak since he's been at Alabama. And now he's about to have all the lights, all the microphones, all the cameras directly focused on him. How's that going to affect him? And I'm almost more ready to see Blake Barnett take that, because Blake Barnett's a guy who was the number 1 quarterback in the country when he was a senior. He's dating a model pro surfer who's incredibly good looking. He's got a real Catherine Webb thing going here. He's not scared of that camera. Blake Barnett wants that camera. Now, the thing about Barnett is he's 180 pounds soaking wet.
Has he not played well in scrimmages?
No, he's looked great. He's of all of them, people say, okay, that's who you want. The problem is when you have no experience, you're coming straight in from high school, and you're not physically ready necessarily to take a hit from a Kim Dichie. It can be a problem. So I think that's where that is. And I said this on Sports Call yesterday. Alabama's in their window. You could make the argument Alabama's always in a window to some degree to win a championship. They're in a big window right now. Alabama's in a good spot. They've got the defense that could win a national championship maybe by itself. And don't put a quarterback in there that's going to hurt that. And I feel like Coker, above all, may hurt that more than any of them. In my opinion, even more than Barnett. I preface all this by saying I'm not at practice every day. I'm just basing this off the sense I get. It feels like Coker just can't get his hands around this thing, and it's right there for the taking. And it's not a shot at him. It really isn't. I know it sounds like it. Some people it's a big deal to be the quarterback at Alabama. You've got to have the right makeup, and not everybody does. I wouldn't, certainly. A lot of people wouldn't. And so it's a big albatross around your neck, and you've got to embrace it. It doesn't feel like Coker's embraced that yet.
256-234-6221 as we close out this segment talking about Alabama, Wisconsin, which is our prediction. Derrick Henry rushing yards will be the tiebreaker, so call in with that. You can also find us on our social media outlets and pass them along there. Other running backs. Can you give us an update on Kenyon Drake, update on the newcomer, the number 1, I guess, running back in the country coming in this year?
Yeah, Damian Harris has looked pretty good. Obviously, one of the big things for him would be how he picks up blitzes, et cetera, and he's done a decent job of that from what I understand. Kenyon Drake, electrified football, if you ask me, but I'm worried about that injury. I mean, the running back situation, everybody seems to be so comfortable with it. I'm a little more concerned about that than I am about the quarterback almost.
256-234-6221, more of the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown right after this.
All right, guys, coming to you in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back into the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown, live on location at JR Sports Bar and Grill. A couple of quick notes out there as we pass it along. First off, I'm going to, at the end of this segment, I'm going to pass along when the replays are going to be on for not only Benjamin Russell, Dadeville, and Central Clay County. You can pull those in here on Lake Broadcasting, Charter Channel 3, and we've had a number of questions coming across on when we can pick those up. I'll pass that along here. Great sponsor of our programs for a long time, the Sure Shot. They're having a grand reopening today, or actually it was yesterday and today, so make sure to stop by the Sure Shot. It's out on Highway 280 in the old Sears building, so go by and see our good friends at the Sure Shot. Let's go back to the phone lines. Seth, you're on Sports Blitz.
Hey, boys, how's it going?
Good, good to hear from you, Seth.
Yeah, good to finally get to hear the show again, man. I'm so excited about football season. I can't tell you, I'm shaking. I'm shaking a little bit.
Well, we got a week, man. You gotta hold on, baby.
Whew, I'm telling you. But I heard you guys talking about Alabama football, and I got to say, I think one of you guys said the running back situation made you nervous, and I feel like, yeah, that's part of it. But I mean, the whole thing just seems like one giant powder keg, and it could go really well or it could go really badly. I mean, we're talking about. I mean, Nick Saban, like the other day, he put his face in his hands. This man is beyond bewildered with this quarterback's race, and he's just tired of hearing about it. And he wants to name somebody, but he can't make it happen, boys. And Miss Terry can't make it happen either. And if none of these guys take control, I mean, it's going to be very difficult. I mean, he was talking about the offensive line, and the offensive line didn't even know, because they run a no-huddle offense, who the quarterbacks were from play to play. They couldn't even differentiate who these guys are. And I'm thinking, man, if the team hasn't figured out, who they can respond to, I mean, that's a serious problem. And the thing that nobody's talking about is that these quarterbacks are throwing to very inexperienced receivers. You lose Amari Cooper off that squad, and that's like 70% of your pass yards. You got Chris Black, you got Ardarius Stewart, and people think that they should step up. But what if they don't? These guys, I mean, these quarterbacks are throwing to green receivers. They're catching it from green quarterbacks. And, I mean, a couple of injuries on the offensive line, I mean, it could go really bad. Lane Kiffin starts getting all crazy. That starts making Nick all crazy. And then the gray hairs start, boys. I mean, it could go badly.
Seth,
I don't think it'll be very bad, but
let me respond to him, Randy. Because first of all, I mean, man, you threw a lot of what ifs out there. I mean, look at it this way: if Tennessee has a bunch of injuries on their offensive line, or Auburn has a bunch of injuries on their, I mean, you go down the list, LSU, anybody. I mean, it's going to be a problem if you have a bunch of injuries like that. And so I'd never try to predict those. But I think you make some really good points about some of the other things. I will say this, though. The thing that gives me some calm is the fact that if you have a good defense, and Alabama's going to have a great defense, and you have good special teams, and Alabama's got J.K. Scott, I don't care about the rest of it. J.K. Scott's the best punter in Alabama history. I think that'll go down for sure. Then you can deal with some of the other stuff. You can wait on the offense to come around. And it's not like they play the most dynamic offenses in the world until they get to Georgia. You look at Wisconsin, they're going to be okay, but Alabama should be able to handle that. And then they play MTSU, no-brainer. Then they play Ole Miss, and Ole Miss, they've got Laquan Treadwell, but they've got some questions of their own at quarterback and at running back. So, look, I think Alabama's going to be okay until they get to Georgia. By the time we get to Georgia, somebody better have stepped up and taken these reins.
No doubt about it.
Seth, you got a prediction for us,
it's
buddy?
Crazy, but I do think I think Alabama should be okay, but it makes me nervous. You know what I mean? Like, it's never been this tedious the entire time that Nick Saban's been there.
No, I disagree. Last year, Seth, was just the same way. Because I'll tell you, plenty of times Blake Sims and Jake Coker made him put his head in his hands. There's no doubt about it. It scared me to death. I'm almost numb to it at this point.
Seth, you got a prediction
Well,
for us, buddy?
you have a good day. As always, I enjoyed the show, and I can't wait to get back on the air with Dan on Sunday.
All right, thank you so much, buddy.
Appreciate
And 256-234-6221. We can take your predictions. Alabama, Wisconsin. Derrick Henry. He brought up a lot of things that yes, you talk about, but
That was a snowball effect.
Amari Cooper was the best point I thought he made. With Amari Cooper and what he did with 1,700 yards receiving last year.
Yeah, 1,700 and some odd. Yeah, it was crazy.
It's a lot to make up, and there's plenty of talent there on Alabama. But to make up that type of a difference at receiver, I think is the best point that he made.
Well, here's the thing. You don't make it up. I mean, you don't make it up with one guy. You try to make it up with some other. Darius Stewart has looked fabulous in practice. He's looked really strong. He's not Amari Cooper. I'm not pretending he is. Chris Black is one of the other names he brought up. That's a guy who seems to have been passed over somewhat. This Richard Mullaney that has come in from Oregon State, he's looked very strong. Again, it's going to be Amari Cooper by committee. And even then, 5 receivers are probably not going to be able to put up what Amari Cooper did. He's a once-in-a-generation guy. I mean, Amari Cooper may be the best receiver Alabama has ever had in school history. So I'm not expecting somebody to do that. I'm expecting somebody to step up somewhere and try to make up some of this difference. And last year we had to have Amari Cooper because there were deficiencies in the defense. We had to have somebody that could be that dynamic and bring us back. Well, we had to have Amari Cooper. He stepped up. This year, maybe the offense can lean on the defense a little more because the defense was disappointing, especially in the last 4 or 5 games. If the defense will keep their head about them, then maybe they can prop up the offense this year.
256-234-6221. Talked a lot about Alabama. We'll close with this. Is there as much worry with Alabama's defense and what you saw at the end of the year? And not only that, the year before as well, Luke, with these up-tempo offenses and the struggle with stopping them and no longer the Alabama defense that we saw against LSU in 12 that you just couldn't move the football on, and 25-0 championship. Barely crossed the 50. Not sure if they even crossed the 50 now that I think back. But with these offenses, it seems to have leveled the playing field. Does that worry you any as an Alabama fan?
Not so much because no other team has been as good defensively against them as Alabama has. I mean, they've been as good as anybody. I mean, look, you go back to last year. Everybody loves to talk about the amount of yards and points they give up to Auburn. Auburn scored with a few seconds left to make it a 44-point game.
Ohio State too, though.
But Ohio State is pretty doggone dynamic. I mean, Ohio State was on a roll like you couldn't believe. I'm not making excuses for them necessarily. I'm just saying, in the end, you look back at that Ohio State team, that was a strong team. Ezekiel Elliott's going to be a high NFL draft pick. They have receivers that were NFL draft picks. They've got quarterbacks that could probably start for NFL teams right now. I'm not all that down on the defense, even though I still think it was moderately disappointing last year. I do think some things will turn around. They upgraded in talent. Minkah Fitzpatrick, Marlon Humphrey. Marlon Humphrey is going to be a starter. You can just write that down. He will be a starter. That's an upgrade. You've seen him. I've seen him. Talent-wise, I don't think there's any doubt about it.
256-234-6221 up against another break here on the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown. Our prediction is Alabama, Wisconsin, Derrick Henry rushing yards. When we come back, we're going to bounce all around a lot of different topics. We talked about high school football in the first hour. If you want to call in, continue to talk about that, we'd love to hear from you. If you were out in some local area teams and saw some great plays, some great players, and you want to just highlight some of those, we'll definitely take those phone calls as we come back. More of the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown right after this. Welcome back into the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown. Got about 30 minutes left here on the program. Prediction this week will be Alabama-Wisconsin. Tiebreaker will be rushing yards for Derrick Henry. We've hit all over it. Luckily, we don't have a Bama Blitz that we got to get into here. As Justin, I'm sure, is looking at me over here going, please, no more Bama talk, Randy. I don't know if I can take it anymore. But, Luke, you've been on a pretty good roll with that.
What, just overtaking, just Bamarizing the whole place?
Yeah, there are just so many question marks going into Alabama season. I think anytime that the quarterback's a question mark, that it's easy. It's such an easy topic to spin into. I want to spin into some of the other SEC programs, though, and I just want to make this a wide variety. Two teams that I cannot get a read on whatsoever, Tennessee and Arkansas. Which two of those teams, in your opinion, as we head into the season? Now, Williams being out may help your answer there on the Arkansas side, but so many of the pundits out believe one, if not both of these programs are going to get over the hump this year.
Well, I'm more of a believer in Arkansas than I am Tennessee. And the reason is because Arkansas has an identity. They know what they are. Now, you may not agree with their style of play. You may not agree with a lot of things about them. But I believe Arkansas knows what they are. They're a running team. They're smash mouth. Tennessee is a lot of lights and shiny things. And they've got some talent. They've got some good receivers. They've got some really strong receivers. They've got nice running backs. Joshua Dobbs can be an electric quarterback. But they've got questions on their defensive side. They've got questions along that offensive line, and that's going to be a problem. You can have all the electricity you want at your skill positions. If you've got an offensive line that can't block for them, it doesn't matter.
Good points right there. But Jonathan Williams being out, does that change your opinion on them a lot?
Well, a little. I like him a lot. I like him more than Alex Collins. And I like Alex Collins a lot. But they'll find somebody else. I mean, again, that one doesn't necessarily bother me so much. And they've got a senior quarterback, too. I think you can't discount that. He's not the most dynamic guy in the world, but he is a senior quarterback who has played in this conference for a while now. He knows what the SEC is all about.
256-234-6221, our trivia question we had out there. What year was the last year that the SEC West was not won by Auburn, Alabama, or LSU? Call in with that, 256-234-6221. Putting your name in the hat. I'm not just going to give away a T-shirt, going to give away several things once a week throughout all of our programs as we take those trivia answers. The main reason being is we have so many of you that are listening in other places other than sitting in Alexander City, Alabama.
Right.
So if you're out throughout the state, if you're tuning us in online, you can answer those, and we'll be able to mail that prize pack out to you once a week if that's what you would like. 256-234-6221. We've hit all over Auburn and Alabama. We tried to move into some of the other SEC teams. Luke, just college football in general, getting close to getting started. Thursday night's game. Do you like the matchup there? Does it intrigue you at all as we start with that?
I think North Carolina, South Carolina is a good matchup. I think it's a natural rivalry that hadn't necessarily taken a foothold, and it should. I think a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, I wrote an article about the rivalries I would like to see, or the matchups I would like to see. In South Carolina, North Carolina was one of them. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but that was certainly one of them. I think that it's because South Carolina doesn't have necessarily another natural enemy outside of Clemson. Now, they have one with that's in conference, and they have one with Clemson, as I mentioned, but that's already going on. So who else? I mean, who else makes sense? And I think the team that makes sense is North Carolina. Start something. And South Carolina is a program that has to create some tradition, manufacture enthusiasm. You don't ever have to worry about that with Alabama and Auburn. We're always going to be excited. But South Carolina, the focus hadn't always been on the football team because there's been no reason to have the focus on the football team.
Steve Spurrier seems confident this year. He did last year too. He was all over the news media. They did that piece on him on 30 for. I don't know if it was 30 for 30. I think it was on the SEC network that did the nice piece on Steve Spurrier. But he does seem confident this year. There's not a lot of talk, not a lot of love going South Carolina's way. Could they be the sneaky program here in the SEC?
I guess if they were in the West, I'd say no chance. But they're in the East, and I would say there is a chance because while some people are buying into Georgia, I mean, some people are really buying some Georgia stock. I've seen them projected to be in the playoffs now, which I totally don't agree with, but we'll see. Georgia is your front runner, obviously. I picked Missouri just because I'm not going to buck a trend. I've learned that lesson. and the stock market and it's a friendly wager on a football game, whatever. Don't you always say, man, that team's due? No, they're really not. And I think Missouri has got a very nice schedule. It sets up nicely for them. South Carolina, I believe they have to play LSU and Texas A&M from the West. I think that's a problem for them. I think this is kind of like a 7 to me.
Yeah, and that's what I think a lot of people expect. And for Steve Spurrier, if he has that type of year that he had last year and this year at 7-5, how much longer does he hang in here, Luke?
Well, here's the thing.
Where are they ending in recruiting? You know, when they had that stretch with Lattimore, when they got Clowney, they were a top 10 recruiting class type of team, weren't they? Have they not dropped a little bit the last few years, Luke?
Yeah, they have, and I think part of that is because the state of South Carolina hadn't been putting out the talent either. When you got Jadeveon Clowney in your home state, that's certainly going to help you a lot. So, and they had some other guys that year. Alshon Jeffrey was from South Carolina. He wasn't the same year, but it's
Marcus Lattimore was.
Marcus Lattimore. I mean, things like that, they just help you out. I mean, that's just a natural 5-star right there in your home state. And they don't have a lot of competition. I mean, they got to face off against Clemson, but the home state kid usually is going to go to South Carolina. So I think this year they've dropped back a little bit, I believe. And also when you're in the SEC, it's one thing, you can be 12th nationally and look fantastic. When you're 8th in the SEC, that's the problem.
Yeah, that's the thing. When I watch South Carolina, I don't have that Lattimore. There's not that Clowney. There's not – and it really a surprising part of the Steve Spurrier era at South Carolina is they haven't ended up with a tier all SEC, no doubt quarterback. That still shock you a little bit, Luke?
Yeah, I guess. But if you think back to his Florida days post-Werfel, I mean, he was doing all the platooning, and it seems like he just couldn't make his mind up because Spurrier gets very frustrated that people aren't as good as he is. And it's their fault. You know, hey, man, Spurrier, you were fantastic. I mean, it's going to be hard to be as good as you.
All right, here we are, and we're going to go ahead and take another break here on the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown with a couple of quick notes as we go to break. Auburn will play Alabama State during the 2018 football season, kind of expanding that FCS here in the state of Alabama, I guess, as Auburn's taking on Jacksonville State. They'll be taking on Alabama State. It's going to be a real tough one there. But, look, if you're going to keep the money around, you know I've always been that way, Luke. You haven't always been that way. You're totally negative when it comes to Alabama playing UAB or another program. Me, I'm like, please do. I mean, make sure to keep the money here if we're going to have to do it anyway. Another quick piece of note that we'll pass along, and I said I would. High school football replays here, and let me say, I think Lake Broadcasting does it as good as anybody here in the state. I know that I'm biased towards that, but Horseshoe Bend will be Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Central of Clay is Sunday at 7 p.m., Monday at 10 p.m., and Wednesday at 8 p.m. The Dave will broadcast. By the way, Central Clay, Tommy Wood, I think he's one of the best. Dave will broadcast. I watched YouTube, a lot of that last night. They do a great job. It's very well put together, and the guys there calling those games are doing a tremendous job for a good program. Dable's replays are Saturday at 8 p.m., Monday at 7 p.m., and Wednesday at 11 p.m. And our replays, Benjamin Russell High School, Saturday at 5 p.m., Sunday at 10 p.m., and Tuesday at 9 p.m. We'll throw that graphic out there on our social media outlets as well. More of the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown right after this.
Three, two, one.
Welcome back into the Sports Blitz Saturday Sports Countdown live on location at JR Sports Bar and Grill. Love for you to come out, bring your kids out in uniform.